I would like to welcome back up to the stage Jeff Podolsky and get us going.
Great, thanks. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the breakfast the morning, and then the lunch. You can see my mind's always on food. So this afternoon, as Kelly mentioned, we'll be taking a little deeper dive into how organizations can effectively build and grow impactful employee commute support programs. We'll focus on talking about key steps and strategies for how and where to start, what types of support and benefits you can offer, and how to get your employees enrolled. You'll learn about available resources, tools, and support services that you can put to use. So you'll be hearing more about all the employer and employee resources that Get There Oregon and local partners like Westside Transportation Alliance and others across the state offer during this afternoon's table exercise and hybrid breakout sessions that Kelly just mentioned. For those here, a reminder, I guess, for those in attendance, if you haven't had a chance to do so yet, encourage you to check out the tables that are located on the sides of the room. So our great friends at TriMet and Commute with Enterprise, great information over there from Get There, and then, of course, Westside Transportation Alliance, too. So would encourage you, especially if you're from an employer based here in Washington County, to check out the WTA table, but we're happy to talk to everyone. And we appreciate that organizational staff that are putting together and running employee commute support programs often represent many different functional departments like HR and operations and sustainability, and they aren't necessarily employee commute options experts. So I wanted to just take a minute and call out some specific support services and tools that are available. So first, as I mentioned, there's employee program planning and support available. Oh, are there slides? Oh my gosh. Sorry. I'm like, this tech is beyond me. I'm mono media. I still work off paper. So thank you, Kelly. So there's employee support or employer support for the employee programs available from your local Get There Oregon partners. So here in Washington County, that would be us as WTA. And those partners can help you create and grow your programs based on your needs and interests as an organization. The partners can also assist you in conducting employee surveys. I think Cassie this morning and some of the other speakers talked about the importance of those surveys and engaging with your employees, learning what they want, what their challenges are, and the opportunities. So those partners can be great for that. And then for those folks or employers here in the region that fall under the ECO rule, can also satisfy the requirements for that. You can use the Get There Connect tool that was also mentioned this morning. It's a free tool to help your employees find commute options, match up with carpools and van pools, offer reward programs, and track the impact metrics. And new on Get There Oregon is a great online commute solutions toolkit. It has downloadable and customizable employee materials that make it easy to promote commute options and Get There Connect. Sorry, the problem with being on paper is now I have to switch pages. So with those tools and support services available, a big challenge can often become engaging leadership and other functional departments in standing up these programs or expanding the programs. The good news is that, as we've already heard a little bit today, supporting these employee commutes can benefit organizations by serving a wide range of critical business needs. Bringing all of the different business benefits to light can help elevate providing employee commute support as a priority, and even break down some of those functional department silos to help make the programs more effective. But what other approaches can we take to engage leadership in our functional departments? We'll talk about some of that in those table exercises and the hybrid breakout session that are coming up a little bit later. But before that, to kind of get our creative thinking going, I'm going to introduce this afternoon's featured speaker, Sarah Bronstein. Sarah oversees the Sustainable Transportation Program at Oregon State University's Corvallis campus. She and her team work to deliver transportation services and programs for the university's growing student population that currently includes over 24,000 undergraduate and graduate students and nearly 5,500 employees. Providing students and staff with flexible, affordable, and sustainable transportation options outside predominantly driving alone is a central cornerstone in the university's strategy to reduce traffic volume and parking demand both on and off campus. Sarah's going to share with us how OSU developed a board game that you can see set up here as an outreach tool to use in devising how to achieve OSU's sustainable transportation strategy that set an aggressive goal to reduce drive-alone trips to campus by 1/3 to 20% by 2023. And the game has continued to serve as a facilitation tool for conversations at OSU and beyond about the trade-offs and costs to employers of providing parking versus encouraging other modes of transportation. So please join me in welcoming Sarah to the stage.
Oh, cool. I got 2 mics, I got a clicker, I got screen here. Okay. Hopefully you all can hear me, and I'll try not to look at these things too much and spend more time looking at you all, because this is a much better view out here. You all look great. So, hey everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I want to just start by saying it's an honor to get to share this stage and this room with you all. There's some giants in the room, people that I turn to when I need to ask for help and understand how things could be better. And so I felt a little bit like a country mouse this morning driving into the Nike campus, like, wow, look at these buildings, and like getting to hear from OHSU and WTA and Portland State's in the room, people that I greatly respect. So it's really phenomenal to get to be part of the conversation and be here. So thank you. I'm here to share a little bit with you about a planning process that our university went through and how that planning process and the tools that we developed as part of it were our way of trying to build buy-in, which is something that we've talked about maybe in different forms all morning. It feels like, how do we gather the troops and the resources to get everybody marching in the same direction and all believing in what we know is true, which is like how critically important it is to support our commuters with real choices, so that we don't have people trapped in this feeling that driving alone is the only way to get to work. So I'll share a little bit about Corvallis, for those of you that aren't familiar, in our campus, and I'll talk a little bit about, I see a couple fellow MERPs in the room, so this might be familiar to you, but in grad school I was taught to always answer the question, why this plan and why now? And so I do that to this day. I'm thinking through what it is that's critical in this moment and what's the reasoning, the raison d'etre behind the plan. We'll also talk about what the planning process looks like, what this game is that I made, and why it's been helpful. And then we'll talk a little bit about where we've gone post-plan, because the plan wrapped up in 2020 and a lot has happened since then. Okay, a little bit about us. So the OSU Corvallis campus, as mentioned, has about 24,000 students. About 5,000 of those are campus residents. So quite a few of our students are living on campus. We I didn't put a stat in here about the number of parking spaces that we have on campus, but it's similar to OHSU. We have about 7,000, but about 1,000 plus of those are dedicated to campus residents, so they're actually not available to commuters. So it's really more in the like 5,600 parking spaces available for our commuting population. The stat that I provided earlier about our employees is actually low. I looked it up before this, and we actually have closer to 7,000 employees who are coming to campus or who call Corvallis campus their primary location. So that also includes our remote employees. Our campus is vast, 400 acres. That's a very large campus, and if you were to just look at this beautiful picture, you might think, gosh, they've got so much extra space. Like, surely if they want to build some extra garages or parking lots, they've got room for that, right? It just sounds like a lot of space. But it's important to remember that we are a land-grant university, and as a land-grant university, one of our primary missions is conducting agricultural research, which is open space intensive. Like, we have cattle grazing and sheep on campus. Like, they are right there, and that space to the uninitiated might appear vacant, but it is in fact being heavily utilized as a research institution. So that's something that we sometimes have to sort of explain to set the stage for why what appears to be a place with a lot of extra room actually has a lot of space constraints. And then I also like to just throw out the statistic. We're in Corvallis. Corvallis has a population of about 58,000 residents, and that includes the student population, which means that about half of our city residents are our student body. So they make up a very large portion, and as a result, the ways that our students and employees move around have a really outsized impact on just the general feel of our city. So I'm here to talk to you about this plan that I created, this 2030 Sustainable Transportation Strategy, and I say I, but at this point, this process has eclipsed my department and myself, and this is now a university approved and vetted document and guiding force. And so what I want to talk through is how that came to be, that this process that started sort of in-house in our department came to be something that is seen as sort of a universal guiding document for our organization and how we got there. So without further ado, a little bit about making the case for the plan. So I mentioned I was going to ask this question: why this plan? Why now? So I was hired to work at Oregon State University in this role in 2016, and at the time, there was no coordinated, organized commute program on our campus. So we had a smattering of services and benefits that were sort of spread across campus, but there was no one place that housed it all. And when they brought me on board, there was sort of a sense of like, here, just kind of take these things that other people are working on and make it go. And there wasn't a sense of strategy or really a sense of ROI. And so that was our first intent with this plan, was like, let's take a step back and pause and decide if the things that we're doing are really what we should be doing, if they're meeting people's needs, and if maybe there's a better way. We also really needed to get leadership buy-in, and the particular reason that this was important is because there were things that we started to feel, based on what we were seeing our peers doing, were really important, but that we knew would not be politically popular. And so we knew we were going to need backup. We needed to have our leadership's buy-in if we were going to make changes like suggesting that we switch from selling annual permits to selling daily parking permits, for example. That was not going to go over well with our faculty. And then lastly, we were in a bit of a push-pull relationship, town-gown relationship with the city at the time. So the university had gone through a pretty significant growth spurt. We had a lot of new people on campus, a lot of new traffic as a result of that, a lot of new parking impacts, and there was sort of a need to rebuild community trust. And so we saw this as an opportunity to pursue that as well. Okay, so our first approach as we began the planning process was that we wanted to sort of listen to people's concerns and then parrot back what we were hearing to tell them that we were listening and that we were going to be keeping their concerns in mind as we went through the planning process. And so the first thing that we developed was this set of 5 key values. And our attempt here was to make sure that there was something that spoke to everyone. And so we were hearing early from our leadership some concerns about making sure that we were not making whatever we chose to do in this planning process wasn't going to make getting to campus too expensive or too difficult for our students, for our low-income employees, that we weren't going to be creating unintended impacts in our adjacent neighborhoods where we have some areas where there is no managed or districted parking, and so we have to be very sensitive about parking spillover effects. And then we wanted to communicate that we were going to be thoughtful about using our land wisely, using our financial resources wisely. So in some cases, these were like ways to educate up, and in some cases, these were things that we wanted to make sure people were hearing. And every talk that I would give, I would put these in a different order depending on who was in the room. So you're getting the student version. We are being bold in addressing the climate crisis. We care about your future. We care about emissions. But if I was going to leadership, that last bullet would be at the top. And so it was important to keep all these things in here and also to adjust the messaging based on who we were talking to. So here's where we started. And I show this because it's kind of amazing to me that we basically had a starting point that I think for many organizations would be an enviable position to be in. Having a 30% drive alone rate before you've even really launched any commute programs at all. Some people might just say, gosh, I think our work is done. Like, thanks for being here. We're finished. And the truth is that even with this drive alone rate, we still were facing some pretty significant constraints in terms of our space availability. And so that was the primary driving factor that we really needed to communicate and to think through was that we have more people that want to come to campus and want to drive to campus than we have space for. And we do not necessarily have the capacity to generate, the parking that would be necessary to provide for all of them. So I just put this up here because it's the place that we started, and our first question to ourselves was like, well, surely all the low-hanging fruit is gone. I don't even know how we're going to make any changes here, but we need to because of our position. If we want to be able to grow as a university, which was the intention at the time, we had intentions to continue to grow in our enrollment, we were going to need to fit everybody into this space one way or another. So what we did at that point was start to develop scenarios. And scenario 1 was what happens if we do nothing and we grow in the way that we intend to grow. So we took the population projections that we were getting from our Office of Enrollment and our HR, and we sort of plugged those in based on our existing drive alone rate, which actually these are 2018 numbers, not 2019 numbers, so the drive alone rate is just a little higher. And we learned, okay, we're gonna need 1,600 additional parking spaces over a 10-year time frame. If all of those people are driving to campus, that's going to be a 20% increase in our carbon footprint, our transportation carbon footprint. And if we want to accommodate them on campus, we either need to find 16 acres of additional land in order to build surface lots for them all. That's not that expensive for us to build. It's about 16 million. Okay, we can probably do that. But we don't really have the space. So maybe we just put it all in a garage. Cool, that's only 1.6 acres. But that's going to cost us 100 million. And those were cheap, by now. But these dollars have actually gone up. But that was our current thinking at the time. So this was what we showed to leadership. We were like, here is the position that we are in if we want to be successful and to be the organization that you say you want to be. And here's the alternative. What if we were able to reduce our drive alone rate to 20%? So if we were to choose this bold climate action scenario, and let's say that we achieve it over a 10-year time frame, we would actually have a parking surplus. And that means that we could take that space and you get to build your beautiful STEM building on this surface lot that nobody's parking in anymore. And our metrics for CO2 are going to go down, so we're going to be meeting our climate goals. We won't have spillover into the neighborhood. People aren't driving anymore, so that means we're being good neighbors. So we took all of those values that we had started with, and then we showed how if we achieve these goals according to all these values, we're going to hit it out of the park. And of course, our leadership was like, that sounds great. We want the climate action scenario, but we want you to tell us how to get there, and we want you to bring the community along with you. And so at that point, this was December of 2019, and they wanted us to stand up like a really robust public engagement process, which we didn't even realize. We were like slipping under the wire. And so we engaged a consultant to help us to do this work. And so we basically were going to go out to the community and say, we want to achieve this goal. How do we get there? What do you need? And use that to sort of build out a list of actions that our organization was going to take. I just want to make sure that I'm keeping in time. I think I'm probably already late, but okay. Okay, cool. And so what that looked like was developing a board game. And the reason that we did that is because we knew if we just went out and did dot exercises or listening sessions, we were just going to get an earful about parking. It's like we weren't going to get the input that we needed to really understand how to move the needle. And so we were like, okay, we'll have a conversation about parking, but we're going to do it on our terms, and we're going to start by making people sit in our shoes and truly understand the trade-offs and the costs that we're facing as an organization. So this is an example of a portion of the board. We created this game where you are collaboratively working as transportation planners for the university. We give you a budget, we give you a growth scenario, and then we say, okay, you're going to start by accommodating all of the growth over the next 10 years on our campus by building enough parking for everybody within your budget. 1, 2, 3, go. You have 5 minutes. And like it's really fast and rapid, and it's intended to break your brain because it broke ours, right? Like this was the scenario that sent us in a different direction. And it works really well, in part because I think some people come to the table and they're like, sweet, I get to solve campus's parking problems. I'm going to put the parking exactly where I want it, and I'm going to get this big garage that I've always dreamed about, and it's going to be great. And it sort of forces people to take a step back and realize the constraints that make that a difficult, if not impossible, scenario for us as a campus. So we give them 5 minutes to do that, and then we cut it off because it is an impossible scenario. The only way to solve for the math problem that we give you is to build on open space and, like, you know, kick the llamas off of the field, or any of the build in maybe our historic, like, quad spaces, or break the budget and just build a sky-high garage. So phase 2, we have them wipe the board clean and solve for the same solution, but we give them the full suite of transportation tools in the second round. And we say, okay, now you're going to be able to, you know, work on a bike program and have carpooling and a commute platform, and here's all these other options that are available to you. And then we would use the results from those second phases of the game to see, like, what people actually really cared about. And so that was what led us ultimately to our list of initiatives that went into our game. So yeah, here's a picture of us playing the game in a couple of different scenarios. On the left is a bunch of students. On the right, I'm sorry, this is, it's reversed on here. Let's see. So yeah, that's right. So we have a student game night, and then we did a community game night. This was like February 28th, 2020. Like just shortly before no one was going to play board games ever again. And I love this picture because the really skeptical looking guy is a planning commissioner, and just two seats over from him is a city councilor, and we had students at the table. And so we were really, like, bringing people together who needed to understand why we couldn't just build more parking. And this was our way to help them to do that. Yeah, so. And really quickly, I'll go back and say, so the game has had legs in ways that I never could have imagined. We've taken it to conferences. We've played it at other institutions. I've given a copy to DLCD. I just played it with University of Chicago students. U of O has actually taken it and created their own board based on their campus. And we make the board available through the Creative Commons license on our website, so anyone can download it and modify it for your own personal use. And I would love for you to do that. And if you do, just tell me how it goes and show me your new board. It's a 1 to 4,000 ratio to get the squares exactly right so that a Lego fits right on 1 acre, if any of you are GIS nerds out there. So yeah, it's been a really fun tool, and we still play it with our employees as like a new employee orientation. When we hire people on, everyone from like our parking enforcement officers to our student employees at the front counter all have to play this game just so that they understand why we do these crazy things. And so, okay, a little bit about building buy-in beyond just talking about the game. What worked about our process and why. So it was really critical that we bring in a neutral third party. I know we were talking earlier today about, like, okay, we're psyching you up on Monday. You're going to go into your HR department and you're going to, like, make the pitch for TDM, transportation demand management, or and here's the things you're going to say. But for us, we knew that we didn't necessarily have the right to present that message, and so we hired a very nice consultant with nice Italian suit to do that message for us. And it was really effective. It was important for us. And I don't know that it's necessary for everyone, but it worked very well for us to have someone else besides an internal department delivering that message. Second of all, we checked back early and often, and we reflected back what we heard. So that was the values that I talked about, and it kind of gets back to what Cassie was saying earlier about, you know, thinking about your different stakeholders and what their different needs are, and really making sure that there was something for everyone in the final plan, so people looked at it and said, yeah, I remember when we talked about that, and there's that program that I wanted to see, and that's there. And then just the idea of interactive play was this really powerful disarming process for engaging people. And it sort of brought people to the table in a really different way, where they were being proactive parts of the solution instead of coming at us and telling us what we should be doing. It sort of like disarmed people a little bit and helped them to feel more collaborative about the process. Okay, so where we're going from here, this is just a screenshot from our website where we track our progress on the elements that ultimately made it into the plan. We ended up with 15 actions that we selected. Number one being pay-as-you-go or daily parking as our sort of like flagship. This is where we want to get to. And then we added a lot of other things. And one thing I didn't include a slide on this, but we sort of developed a framework for how we talk about the different actions that made it into the plan. We call it the 4 C's: cost, culture, convenience, and concrete. And those are all things that we've talked about today in some way or another. And they're all aspects that influence people's transportation decision making. And so we wanted to make sure that all the actions on here in some way tapped into each of those different ways that we think about our transportation choices. And what's been interesting is that the areas where we've made the most progress since the plan was adopted are mostly in the concrete area, which is pretty exciting. And so there's things that are getting built now that are like unicorn projects that I never envisioned that I would see in my professional lifetime. And part of what's made them happen is that they were in a plan. And we got to back up other organizations in the area. In some cases, it wasn't even OSU that was doing the work. So for example, we're in permitting now for a mobility hub on our campus that was funded through a $3 million grant that our local COG applied for. There's going to be a sister mobility hub at the community college campus nearby. Amazing. I never thought that I would see that happen. There's a street on the north end of campus called Monroe where OSU owns the frontage all along one side, and then it's businesses and restaurants all along the north side. We've just completed a conceptual redesign of that street that was funded 50-50 by the city and OSU. This is the preferred alternative with a grade-separated cycle track running the full length of the facility. Again, things I never thought I would see happen that we were able to push forward in part because we just came to the city and said, we've got this thing in our plan and we're about to build this big STEM building and we're going to have to redo the frontage anyway. How about we decide what we want that frontage to look like before we dig it up? This was another potentially non-starter before we put it in our plan. And then when we had students that came to us and said they wanted to do a micromobility pilot on campus, we were like, great, we got it in the plan. Let's do it. When do we start? And we're midway through the pilot. This is just some of our initial numbers from the first 5 months. And at this point, those numbers are going up every day. So we're almost at 1 million minutes traveled on the pilot, which is pretty great. And then lastly, we've struggled on our campus with secure bike parking. We don't have any facilities that are open and available for anyone to use. Usually it's if you're lucky enough to be in a building that maybe installed a bike room as part of its like LEED certification process and you work in that building, then good for you. But for most of the other students and employees on campus, they're stuck with like duking it out for our 50 bike lockers or just using our open racks. So this is really exciting. We're actually taking 8 vehicle parking spaces out of our stadium parking lot and repurposing them for a bike garage, which will house, I believe, almost 90 bikes. Okay, and then here's where we are in terms of our evaluation. And I want to put this up here again, just in the interest of full transparency to show you that we've done so much work and the needle has been like, meep. And part of that's because so much of what we had to do up front is all planning oriented. So all of those beautiful graphics that I just showed you haven't been built yet, but we're working on them. And this was all stuff that had to happen first before we could actually build things. So, but we do a survey every year, even though we are not, our air quality is too clean to, to mean that we need to worry about things like DEQ requirements, and there's no eco rule for us. But we do this anyway because we really need to know what is going on and how people are getting to our campus. And we're seeing some really interesting trends. We've been able to watch what's happened with remote work on our campus through our survey. So, and importantly, the way that we ask the questions that get at this data, it's important to us to measure trips, not people. And so I've seen some surveys where people just ask, how do you most often get to campus? And then that's the answer. And here we ask them to fill out a diary of how they got to campus over the last week. And then we count all of those trips towards the total pie. And so that allows us to capture people's flexible choices from day to day. So this is trips, not people. So 7.7% remote trips is up from where it was before the pandemic. We were at 1% of telecommute, as we called it then. We also, have the scooters like sneaking into the mix now. Those used to be in the other category because they just were not even really big enough to count as their own category, and now they're at 1.3%. So, I think I'll stop here and say thank you. And I want to say also that I have a copy of the game just sitting up here on a table if folks want to come and play with it and check it out. And again, it's available for download. And if you want to talk to me about organizing a game on your campus or with your employer, programs, see me afterwards.
Thanks. So I think maybe we have time for like one or two questions if anybody has them.
Cost, culture, convenience, and concrete. I'm sorry I don't have a slide for that. I cut it out because there were too many slides and I went over anyway.
We can send the director's version of the director's cut of your presentation
Nice.
to everyone.
Nice. Maybe one more question if anybody has any.
Sarah, you'll be around for a little while.
I'll be around. I'm going to go on the tour.
It's like,
Where did you say the game was available online?
So our website, transportation.oregonstate.edu, and then if you navigate to the Sustainable Transportation Strategy section of our page, the downloads are all there.
for those online, that question was where's the game available for download? So there's the website.
And it's right here.
Thanks again, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.